Greetings to you all. You know, sometimes it seems that I just have really good luck. The item I'm going to show you today is something that I have been looking for years. I am not kidding. It is a very rare consumer electronic device with some pretty unique design features, and it's taken me years to get one of these because very few ever show up on eBay, and when they do, they go for very high prices. Well, I finally got one, and it gives me great pleasure to show it to you right now. This is a Garmin GPS 12CX. This is a handheld GPS receiver, and it was made in 1999. This is a very unique GPS receiver, and I'll tell you why. Unsurprisingly, probably to you guys, it's the display. This GPS has a color LCD display. It's the same type of display that you saw in my graphing calculator. It's a very primitive style display. It has a golden background like a black and white display, but it is color, and it's only capable of displaying 3 colors, red, green, and blue, with no mixtures between them. This was Garmin's first handheld GPS with a color display, and it was actually the second handheld GPS with a color display ever. The first GPS with a color display, which is the unit that this unit competed against, was called the Color Track, made by the infamous Garmin rival Magellan. And that unit was introduced in 1998. This came out just a short while after, a few months after, and it competed against it. Now, first of all, a little background. This unit, the GPS 12CX, actually came from a series of GPS units, the Garmin GPS 12 series, which was Garmin's first attempt to have a series of GPS units all together, where each model had different features, so there was basically a model for everybody. Someone who wanted a GPS with specific features, they could get a particular model from the GPS 12 series that had those features. There were 4 models in the series. The basic model was the GPS 12. Then the model above that was the GPS 12 XL, which added a city point database, more on that later. Then there was this unit, the GPS 12 CX, which is basically a GPS 12 XL with a color display. And then there was the GPS 12 Map, which was a completely different unit, both in its hardware and its software. It was a mapping-capable GPS. This is not a mapping-capable GPS. This is actually my first GPS that is not mapping-capable. This is the third handheld GPS I've owned. If you were watching me back in the old days, you may remember that I once, at one point in time, owned a Garmin eTrex Legend, which was an excellent GPS receiver, except it eventually succumbed to the joystick problem which plagues the early eTrex GPS receivers. And then I replaced that with this unit, my Garmin eTrex Venture HC, which you have seen in both old and recent videos. This is an excellent GPS receiver. Garmin fixed the joystick problem that plagued the older ones. Very excellent GPS. Garmin doesn't make it anymore, but I do recommend it to anyone looking for a GPS with features like this one has. And now I've got this unit. So we'll give an overview of the hardware first. The antenna is located up here, internal antenna. We've got our buttons here. We have a 4-way directional pad. Actually, it also serves as an 8-way as well, so you can go diagonal. We have buttons: quit, power button, go to, in, out, page, mark, and enter. And of course, I'll demonstrate all these buttons and what they do as this video goes along. There's the writing there. This is a 12-channel GPS. Back when 12-channel was the hip thing, now GPSs have 24 channels. We have the old Garmin logo. How I miss the old Garmin logo. I think their new one's a bit too friendly looking. Then again, I think their new GPSs are a bit too friendly anyway. This is a real GPS. Here's what it looks like. Nothing on top, nothing on the sides. On the back, we have a big rubber pad so it doesn't slip when it's setting down on something, with the big old Garmin logo. Made in Taiwan. We have a connector for an external antenna. This is called an MCX connector, which many older Garmin GPSs used it. And then behind this rubber cover, which is incredibly hard to remove. Wasn't too bad this time. There's a connector to connect it to a computer or a power adapter. And then on the bottom is the battery compartment door. If we turn this ring, Garmin still uses this ring design. Door opens up and it takes 4 AA batteries. And I've got 4 carbon zinc batteries in there. So we just turn the ring back and it flips down. Has this lanyard which is attached to the ring. Lanyard was standard equipment. I also got some other things with this GPS. I got the original carrying case, which was also standard equipment. I don't know why Garmin no longer offers carrying cases standard with their GPSs. I think it's smart to include a carrying case because, you know, keep the unit in better shape. They don't include it anymore. Then again, with their older GPSs, they did not include a computer cable, which they do include a computer cable on their GPSs now, even though it doesn't really matter because they just use a standard mini USB cable. Also, I got the manual with the unit, which of course was standard equipment, and I did get the computer cable, which was an optional accessory. Whoever owned this thing, they actually bought the computer cable for it. It cost $60 back in the day for this thing. It's a serial cable, no USB here. Garmin was very slow in adopting their GPSs to USB. I think it wasn't until like 2002 or 2003 that they finally switched them over to USB, although they sold many models, like my old Etrex Legend, up until like 2009 or 2010 that still use serial cables. But yes, I did get the computer serial cable, which is very nice. And the seller was very kind, included this Hallmark thank you card, which was very nice, and he wrote inside it, "Thank you very much for your purchase. Enjoy, Steve." Isn't that nice? Now, you're probably wondering why these are apparently so darn rare and how I finally got a hold of one. Well, out of the entire GPS 12 series, this was the least popular model, and it was on the market for the shortest amount of time. Garmin didn't release all 4 models and discontinue all 4 models at once. They introduced them all and discontinued them all at different times. The first model in the series, the GPS 12 XL, was introduced in 1997, and it was discontinued in 2006. Next to be introduced was the GPS 12, also in 1997, and it was also discontinued in 2006. So those 2 models had quite a respectable production life. 1997-2006, that's 9 years. The GPS 12 map was kind of short, but still okay. It was introduced in 1999, and it ran until I think 2002 or 2003. The GPS 12 CX, however, had a very short life. It was introduced in 1999, discontinued in 2001, just a couple of years. Besides being the shortest produced model, it was also the least popular model because it was very expensive for the features it offered. Just for an example, a GPS 12 XL at the time of its introduction would run you around $300 to $350, and near the end of its production life you could get one new for as little as under $200. This unit, the GPS 12 CX, at the time of its introduction had a manufacturer suggested retail price of $580. This was not cheap. And near the end of its production life, you could pick a new one up for around $250. And for costing so much more than the GPS 12 XL, just for a color screen, it was not worth it to many people. This did not sell well. So for that reason, these are incredibly hard to find today. I would say it's probably safe to say around half a dozen, that is 6, around 6, you know, give or take a couple, show up on eBay every year. These things are so rare to find. And I don't know how so many people even know about these and why they are so darn popular on the used market, but whenever one of these do show up on eBay, it goes for a wild price. I've seen used ones of these, yet, you know, don't even come with the case or the manual or the computer cable, sell for as much as $150. In contrast, you can get a GPS 12 XL with the case and the manual for as little as $30 or $40. It's nuts. So, how did I get a hold of one of these? Well, I thought, okay, why not finally take the plunge? I've been looking for one of these for 3 or 4 years, see if I can grab a hold of one. Now, this GPS marks the most money I've ever spent on anything for myself I paid about $75 for this. $64 for the unit itself, then another $11 in duty to bring it over to Canada. Now, when I first saw this on eBay, I actually didn't win it. The auction ended and I didn't win it because the guy had a reserve price on it. I had put a maximum bid at the time of like $50. Someone outbid me, but they didn't get it anyway because they got it for $55, but they still didn't meet the reserve price. So the guy relisted it, and he actually lowered the reserve price to $50. So I had bid $50 again, and it broke the reserve, and I'm like, oh cool, I actually have a chance at this. Near the end of the auction, in typical eBay style, many people started outbidding people over and over. Of course, I got outbid, but I kept looking at it. In the last, I would say 30 seconds of this auction, over a dozen people bid on this, and I was the winning bidder. I competed with a dozen people to get this. Holy crap, am I lucky. I expected it to go up to like, over $100, but nobody outbid me. I put a maximum bid of $67, got it for $64. Wow, am I lucky. And the guy packaged it up really nicely and sent it out. And I'm incredibly lucky for getting this for that money, because not only did I get, the GPS with all this stuff with it, but it's in absolutely perfect condition. I doubt this was ever used more than like once or twice. Whoever originally owned it, I don't know if it was originally the seller's GPS or what, but I would say whoever originally owned it used it once or twice and then put it away for years and years. Now, with that being said, this thing does have one fatal problem that the seller did not know about, which I'll go into right now. All of Garmin's GPSs made before 2000 used volatile memory to store user data such as waypoints and tracks and routes and the like, as well as the GPS location data. So, inside them, they have a non-replaceable lithium battery that keeps the memory alive while the GPS is turned off. It's a rechargeable battery, and it's charged whenever you have the AA batteries in the unit, or if you have it plugged into a power source. Of course, like any battery, over time, that battery goes bad. The battery in this GPS has gone completely bad. When you turn the GPS on, every time you turn it on, it acts just like a brand new GPS that's never been used, and if you store any data on it, it is instantly deleted as soon as you turn the GPS off. It is a pain in the butt, and it's quite unfortunate. Obviously, you can probably guess, I did not know that when I bought this GPS. The seller did not know it at all. When you turn the GPS on, it does say that the memory battery is low and that you've lost all your data. But the seller did not acknowledge that. So I was incredibly disappointed when I got this thing to see that. And I messaged him, and he said he was very sorry. He said he thought it meant the regular batteries were low. And he gave me a very fair refund. He offered me a $50 refund. I told him I would be more than happy with $40. So he gave me $40 back, and I'm very happy, and I thank him for doing that. It's unfortunate that this keeps happening to me. I know, some of you may be skeptical of me, thinking I'm some sort of cheapo. Not at all. I just have really bad luck when it comes to buying things on eBay that keep having problems, like the GECB radio and the Seagate ST1 micro drive. I just have bad luck. I would have been more than happy to pay $64 to get a perfect GPS, but I didn't get a perfect GPS, and I even lowered the refund he had offered me from $50 to $40. So he gave me that back, so in the end, I paid about $35 for this, which is incredibly fair, because this does work perfect otherwise, and it's in perfect physical condition. But yes, the memory battery is bad, which is unfortunate. Now, I've done a lot of research on the internal memory battery, and it appears that pretty much throughout the entire time that Garmin made GPSs that use this internal memory battery, they had really bad luck. I searched Usenet group posts dating back to the turn of the century, like around 1999, 2000, 2001, and I found many posts of people who bought this GPS and others like it that use the internal memory battery, and it would be only a few months old, and they would start getting the low memory battery error. I read a lot of posts and I read a lot of responses from people who are technically inclined when it comes to these units. it would appear that around 1998 and 1999, Garmin actually made several GPSs that actually had a defect in the memory battery charging circuit. They designed the charging circuit too mildly, so the internal memory battery did not charge well enough, and if you took the AA batteries out of it for a long time, and the memory battery lost its charge, and you put batteries back in it, even though the battery was still good, the charging circuitry would not charge it up high enough to work again, and the only fix would be to either open the unit up and take the battery out and charge it manually, or just to replace the battery altogether. But it seems that Garmin actually made some GPSs with a defective memory battery charging circuit. This very well could be one of them. Now, to replace a memory battery, it's not an entirely simple process, because these GPSs are not held together in the usual way using screws or whatever. There is not a single screw holding this together. Garmin actually used what's called ultrasonic welding to seal these up, and then they sealed around the welding with silicone type stuff to make it waterproof. And so to take one of these apart, you have to scrape out all the silicone stuff and then actually, pry pretty much. You have to pry the case open, and after that it's a pretty simple process to solder in a new battery. However, then you have to put the thing back together, which basically requires gluing it in some way. So all in all, it's not a very easy process to fix the memory battery in one of these, and I'm not sure I'll ever do it, especially to this unit, because it's otherwise incredibly perfect. I've had this thing for, I think almost 2 weeks now. I've had batteries in it ever since. I'm still getting the low memory battery error, so I would say there's no hope in getting it charged back up just by keeping AA batteries in it. So the battery's either gone bad, or this is one of the units affected with the defective charging circuit. I would say the smartest thing probably Garmin ever did with their GPS units was moving them all to non-volatile memory around 2000, so that you didn't need a memory battery to keep the memory alive. It was just permanent flash memory, so you never had to worry about that. So, if you own a Garmin GPS that was made before 2000, and you're lucky enough that the memory battery is still good, heed my warning. As much as you can, always keep power to the unit. Whether it's keeping batteries in it, just buy a set of carbon zinc batteries since they don't leak, and just keep them in the unit. Or if you just keep it connected to power all the time, keep power to it in some way, just whenever you can, because if you don't, you risk losing the charge of the memory battery, and then you'll never probably be able to get it charged back up, unless you're one of the lucky people who bought one of the few units that doesn't have a defective charging circuit. But still, for the sake of keeping the memory battery good, always keep batteries in your GPS or keep it connected to power whenever you can. And if we compare it to the eTrex Venture HC here, you can see it's quite a bit longer. I would say, a little bit thicker too, and definitely a lot heavier with 4 batteries in it as opposed to 2. And physically the build quality seems very high. It actually seems higher than the eTrex. And with the rubber on it and stuff and the rubberized battery cover, it just feels very high quality. It is waterproof, although I'll never test that, because something I didn't know either is that apparently many of Garmin's GPSs around the turn of the century, while they were specified as being waterproof, actually had defective waterproofing as well. Apparently even the eTrex Legend was affected with that problem. I read a post from someone around the turn of the century who bought the eTrex Legend back when it first came out. They put it underwater and the thing immediately filled up with water and it died. I'm very lucky, because back when I had my eTrex Legend, I did put it underwater, but I didn't have that problem. So yeah, apparently around the turn of the century, Garmin had a couple of problems with their GPSs, but otherwise, the build quality seems very good, and it seems like a very good unit. The hardware design of this GPS, it's obviously consistent with the rest of the GPS 12 series. This actually uses the same case design as many of Garmin's older GPSs, and as a matter of fact, this case design actually dates back to one of Garmin's first consumer handheld GPSs for outdoor use. It was called the GPS 40, and it was introduced in 1994. So that's pretty cool. They kept this design alive from 1994 all the way to 2006. So, I guess finally, after all this rambling, it's time to turn this thing on. Now, because this is a GPS, it just makes sense that we demonstrate it outside. So, I'm going to grab my Canon digital camera, and we will go to the outdoors. Well, that was a fail. You'd never know it, but I've spent the last hour frigging around trying to film this thing because it turns out the display is hard as heck to see on camera. I tried it outside, didn't work that well, couldn't see it. I went in the car and that was a bit better, but I was sweating my head off in there. And so what I've resorted to is coming back here in my bedroom, and I've taken an LED spotlight that Mom bought me for my birthday, and it's hanging there from my ceiling light. Anyway, so I have that spotlight shining down here and it seems to work pretty well. So back to our feature presentation. I mentioned the GPS that this thing competed with, the Magellan Color Track, which was actually the very first handheld GPS with a color display. The Color Track used the same type of display that was in this, but reportedly, according to reviews, this thing has a much higher quality display. And actually, I would believe that, because the display in this, even though it's the same as the display in my graphing calculator, is actually a lot better. My graphing calculator now looks like crap because I'm used to seeing this. It's actually a very nice display. I have the E-Trex running here, and we're getting accuracy down to 6 meters, and we have 10 satellites we're getting a signal from. So, I'll turn this thing on, and this is what we get. We hold the power button down. Welcome to the Garmin GPS 12CX. North America city data. And those beeps mean that it has a message to tell us. Now with Garmin's older GPSs, when they have a message to tell you, they don't throw it right up on the screen like their newer GPSs. They tell you that you have a message, and then you can look at it at your own discretion by pressing page, which I'll do right now. Stored data was lost. Memory battery is low. Searching the sky. So yeah, this thing is behaving like a GPS that has never been used, and as such, this thing has no idea where in the world it currently is. So what it's doing right now is it has no idea what satellites it should look for, so it's just receiving any data from any satellites it can get data from. So as you can see, we're already picking up 2 satellites, number 4 and number 17. Once we get 3 satellites, and once we get a signal from all 3 of them, and once this thing gets all the data collected from the 3 of them, it'll be able to triangulate an approximate position. So what it says on the display right now is auto-locate. That means it has no idea where in the world it is, so it's looking for any satellites it can find. EPE, that means estimated position error, which is basically how accurate it is. Once we get a signal, it'll estimate that and it'll give us a number in feet or meters once I change it to metric. And of course the graphic display showing the satellites that it can see at the present moment. The ones that have a red box around them, that's ones that it has not collected any data from yet. Satellites that it is collecting data from, like 4 and 17 here, it doesn't distinguish between satellites that it's actually getting position data from or satellites that it's still collecting almanac data from, which is kind of annoying because even the other members of the GPS 12 series, they indicate when they're getting a signal but have not collected all the data yet, because those GPSs, their signal bars will turn hollow, and Garmin's newer GPSs do the same thing. But so 4 and 17, it's possible that we haven't collected enough data from them yet, but we are getting a signal and collecting data nonetheless. Other things here, the battery gauge here, it's pretty cool because they display it as a fuel gauge with full and empty positions, which is pretty cool. And what's nice about it is it's very precise. Garmin's newer GPSs, like the E-Trex here, if I look at the battery meter, it shows 2 bars. If the batteries were new, it would show full 4 bars, so it's only accurate to 4 bars. This thing, it's accurate down to the pixel, so theoretically there are 20 bars, so it's a very precise battery meter, which is very cool. So hopefully you'll be able to see the color display here, like some of the satellites their numbers are shown in red. The ones we're getting data from, they're shown in blue. And the battery gauge and the EPE is green. Now this thing will take quite a few minutes to auto-locate, especially because we're indoors. That's something I forgot to mention. The antenna in this thing is actually really good, a lot better than I was expecting. My old Etrex Legend actually could not get a signal in a building or even in the car unless you held it up to the windshield. It just wasn't sensitive enough. This thing doesn't have that problem. It'll get a signal indoors, and it'll even get a signal in the car, so that's really great. And of course, the Etrex Venture HC has Garmin's newfangled high sensitivity receiver, so it's able to get a fine signal in a house or in a car. So we're accurate down to 5 meters. That's the EPE. Another thing that I forgot to mention here is that this GPS does not have WAAS. That is before Garmin introduced that on their GPSs. The Etrex, the original Etrex in 1999, was actually Garmin's first GPS to have WAAS. So for the sake of comparison, I have WAAS turned off on this GPS. I actually don't use it anyway. It serves no use to me because I oftentimes get a good enough signal that my EPE is 3 meters, and WAAS doesn't make that any more accurate. So, we're still collecting data here, so what I'll do is I'll shut off the camera until it has acquired a position fix, and then we'll return. Alright, as soon as I shut the camera off, it actually acquired a fix. We're getting data from 3 satellites. Doesn't seem to be attempting to acquire any more. But it says 2D nav, meaning we have a 2D fix, which means it can calculate our position on the Earth, but not our altitude. Once we get a fix from at least 4 satellites, it'll say 3D nav, and it'll be able to give us our altitude as well. I assume the Etrex here is getting a 3D fix. Yes, it says 3D on the bottom there. So there you go. Alright, I've turned around slightly on the bed here. The colors come out better on the display. But yes, the display is actually really nice. And, this thing's giving us poor GPS coverage. Yes, that's because we're inside a house. That's actually the first time I've gotten that message. And of course it says memory battery is low. It'll say that until either the battery charges by some miracle, or if I ever open it up and replace it. And we've gotten a fix again. It says 2D nav. We are getting a signal from 6 satellites now. Alright, I've set the units to metric now, so we can see that our EPE is 9 meters. And if we look on the Etrex here, it is 6 meters, so not too much difference between them. Actually, when this thing's outside and it's getting a good signal, I can get EPE down to 3 meters, so just as good as the Etrex here, which is pretty good. Alright, we're getting a good enough signal here. We have 8 satellites. Oh, just went down to 6, but we have a 3D fix now, so it's calculating our altitude as well. And there's our EPE, but hopefully it won't give us the poor coverage error anymore, and we'll start showing some of the features of this thing. Now, the actual user interface of this GPS, of course, it's very different from the Etrex Venture HC, and it's actually very different from my old Etrex Legend. But the user interface dates back to one of Garmin's earliest GPS receivers. It was called the GPS 45, and it was released in 1994, just a few months earlier than the GPS 40. The 45 and the 40 were very similar, except the 45 had an external antenna, and the 40 had an internal antenna. But anyway, yeah, the user interface is very similar. It dates back quite a ways. So, what we can do is actually first, if I press the power button here, we can adjust the contrast of the display. And unlike my calculator, which lets you adjust the contrast for all 3 colors, this thing just has them all pre-calibrated, and it just adjusts all of them at the same time. But you can do that, and I'll go back to where it was. There we go. And if we actually press the button twice, it now turns the backlight on, although you can't see it. But the backlight has 2 levels. First level, second level, and then off. And the backlight is excellent. It's an electroluminescent backlight. It's a pale bluish white in color, and contrary to what other people have said about this GPS, The backlight is very nice in that the colors, you can still see the individual colors when it's on. Some people have said it's hard to distinguish between the red, green, and blue with the backlight. I haven't had that problem at all. Anyway, getting a good EPE now, down to 5 meters. So let's press the page button and go through the pages. So the first page you come to is the position page, and Garmin actually considers this the main page you would use on this GPS, contrary to their newer units where they consider the map page to be the main page. So on the position page you have a compass tape which shows your heading, so it's just kind of like a round compass that's been, you know, split down one end and then stretched out to make a rectangular compass. So that shows your heading. You have your track, which is basically your compass heading in degrees. I'm not too terribly knowledgeable on the technicalities of navigation yet. You have your speed. We have a trip odometer. There is no permanent odometer on this GPS. We have our altitude, currently showing 47 meters. Let's compare it to the eTrex here, which apparently has low batteries now. The eTrex, oh, it's in feet. eTrex says 123 feet. Multiply 48 by 3 and you get around 130 or 40 something, so really close, so that's pretty nice. We have our coordinates for our position here. Let's compare it with the eTrex. 20,291, 21,291, so yes, they're very similar, which is very nice. And of course we have a clock. Like any GPS, this gets the time from the GPS satellites, and you have to set your offset. And here in the Maritimes the offset's -4. But on this thing I have to set it to -3 to get the correct time, so not really sure what's up with that. Maybe back when this was made it was -3, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, there's the position page. Now if we use the rocker keypad here, we can actually highlight trip, and if we press enter, we can change it to different things. There's trip, there's our average speed, our maximum speed, our total time, actually that's not total time, that's trip time, the time that we've been moving. That's our elapsed time since the GPS has been turned on. And if I go over to altitude here, I can also change that. There's also travel time, total time, and a trip odometer, and back to the altitude. And if I highlight the value for the trip odometer and press enter, I can reset it if I want, and if I press quit it won't do it. If I press enter it will. So that's it for the position page. I will be taking this outside and demonstrating it outside so you can see it while it's actually navigating. Our next page is the map page, which, because this is a non-mapping capable GPS, you'll see the map page is completely blank. There's absolutely nothing here except the city point database. Now what is the city point database? Well, it's basically exactly what it sounds like. This thing has built into ROM a database of towns and cities all around North America, and they are just represented as waypoints. There are no roads or streets or highways. It is just points that represent towns and cities. Now if I zoom out here, this is what the in and out keys are for. They are to zoom out. The 12CX actually introduced the in and out keys. On the 12 and the 12XL, you have to go to a menu to zoom in and out. But I'll zoom out here, and eventually, there is the town of St. Stephen represented as a point. And if I zoom out more here, for some reason on this database, there's actually 2 points for St. Stephen. There's that one where Saint is spelled out, and then there's this one where it's abbreviated, and they are 2 different points. And so yeah, there's the mapping, and on the bottom here we have our track and our current speed. I can actually use the directional pad and move around on the map. And there it gives the distance where I am on the map, the distance from our actual location. And if I move far enough here, I should be able to find other towns. Here's another place, Watt Junction. I have no idea what or where that is, or even if it even exists. I have never heard of Watt Junction, but anyway, there's the panning of the map. And that's pretty much the map page. I'll show more of this page later when we go outside to show some actual navigation. Now if I press enter on the map page, I get some settings, we have the map setup where you can actually change the colors of stuff like your track log, any routes you set and stuff like that, and whether your orientation is track up or north up. So that's pretty cool. We have our track setup where you can clear the track log if you want. You can set whether the track log wraps after it is full or if it just stops working. And yeah, actually, an interesting thing is when I read old reviews of this GPS, it turns out that most of the people who bought this did not buy it for the color screen, but they actually bought it because it had more memory than the GPS 12XL. The 12XL is able to store 500 waypoints and has a track log of 1,000 waypoints. This can actually store 1,000 waypoints and it has a track log of 2,000 waypoints. So we'll get out of that. We can also find a city. For some reason, I guess it starts in alphabetical order. We have this town in Germany. So I can go down to Show Map, and it'll show this town in Germany, which is some 5,000 kilometers away from here. And finally, our city setup where it just shows what zoom levels you can be at, whether it shows small, medium, or large size cities. I usually have it set so that it shows all the cities regardless of the zoom. So there is the map page. Our next page is the compass page. So here's the compass page. You can see we have a nice color compass here, similar to the compass page on the E-Trex. There's the compass page. Not too terribly different. Of course, the compass only works while you are moving. It doesn't work if you stand still. So yes, if you say aren't fond of the compass strip on the position page, you can use the round compass on the compass page. If you have this thing set to travel towards a waypoint or towards a city, an arrow will show up in the middle of the compass to point you towards it, just like newer Garmin GPSs. And when you're doing that, it'll show your bearing, your distance, and the name of the place you are traveling to. We have our track, our speed, and our estimated time remaining to travel to that point if you are doing so. What I find kind of weird is the compass page isn't actually described very well in the manual. The manual only talks about the compass page when you're using it to go towards a city or a waypoint. So I always figured that you couldn't use the compass for general navigation, but it turns out you can, as you can see right now. Besides the compass page, you can actually switch it from a compass to something else. It's something that it's still on Garmin's newer GPSs, but it's not really it doesn't really work the same way. It's called the highway page. If we press enter, and it'll say highway or compass. So we'll press enter for the highway, and this is what it looks like. The highway page is very cool and it's very useful in certain types of navigation. I'll demonstrate it when we take this thing outside, but when you're traveling and you set this thing to go towards a waypoint or a city, the highway page will basically represent a straight line, a straight highway if you will, between where you were on the map when you set the go-to and the place you were going to. So it's very useful in that while you're moving, the highway actually moves. Let's say, if this is a straight line between where you were and where you're going to, and let's say you're off to the side here, the highway will show as being off to the side, so you've got to move over. Likewise, let's say you're on the track towards the place you're going to, and you turn and start going the other way, the highway itself will actually rotate, and it's a very nice emulation of a highway between where you were when you set the go-to and where you're going to, so it's very nice. And you can set what's called the CDI here, which is basically how wide the highway is. It's set to 0.25 kilometers right now. You can set it to 1.25 or 5 kilometers. When you're going towards a place, you have your bearing and your distance to the place. You also have your speed and your track. And yeah, when you're not doing a go-to, the highway page is not really useful. The highway itself doesn't do anything. All you get is your track and your speed. There's the compass/highway page. So the next page we go to is the main menu. Now, of course, Garmin GPSs today are based on an icon-based menu that debuted with the original E-Trex. This thing is just a regular text-based menu. So the first item in the main menu is the waypoint definition page, and actually before I show you that, let me go back to the map page. and I'll demonstrate creating a waypoint. If I just pan to another area on the map here, and I press the mark button, this is the mark position where it'll create a waypoint. It automatically names it as a number. There's the position on the map. We can add it to a route if we want. So we'll save it. And there's our waypoint. So we'll go back to the main menu. By the way, where pressing page goes forward through all the pages, pressing quit goes backwards through them. So that's pretty nice. So we'll go to the waypoint definition page, and we can create a new waypoint if we want. We can put its name. On these older Garmin GPSs, a waypoint can only be 6 letters long in its name. We can put the symbol for it. I'll show waypoint symbols in a moment. We can put its position coordinates, a 16-character definition, the bearing, the distance, which would show up once you put the position in. Once that waypoint was created, you could either rename it, delete it, create another waypoint, or just exit out. Next is the waypoint list, which is a list of all the waypoints you've created. They're arranged alphabetically, which is very nice. So here's our waypoint we just created, 001. So if I press enter, there's our waypoint, and I can rename it if I want. And before Garmin had the on-screen keyboard that are on the newer GPSs, this one you have to scroll through all the letters and numbers. So I'll just leave it as that. And we can change the symbol here. They give you 16 symbols to choose from, and you can pick a color for each one. So let's say I chose the fish here. We could have a blue fish, a green fish, or a red fish. So I'll make it a green fish here. And we'll save that. And there's our waypoint with our green fish. And if we go back to the map page, there's our green fish. So we'll go back to the main menu. Next is nearest waypoints. It just gives you a list of the nearest waypoints. Of course, the one we just made is the only waypoint in the system besides the waypoint for the Garmin headquarters. Next is proximity waypoints. If you made any of those, proximity waypoints are basically special waypoints that you make, and if you come near those waypoints, the GPS will alert you that you're coming near them. And basically they're a useful way to mark, say, hazardous areas. If you're on a boat, say there's an underwater ledge or something that you don't want to go near, you can set a proximity waypoint for that, and the GPS will alert you whenever you come near it. While we're talking about boating and boating specific features that this GPS has, I will mention a feature called Man Overboard, or MOB. Man Overboard's a pretty cool boating related feature. Basically what it is, when you activate Man Overboard, it immediately creates a waypoint at your current position, and it immediately does a go-to to that position. So let's say I'm on a boat and a friend of mine falls overboard. I can immediately activate Man Overboard. It's very quick and easy to activate, and I'll know where my friend fell overboard, so I can make sure that I keep my boat in that position while I hopefully save my friend. To activate Man Overboard, very quick and simple. Press go to twice. Go to, and it says mob. You press enter, and that's it. It has made a waypoint where my current position is, and it does a go to that waypoint. That's very nice. It's a very useful feature. So to cancel a go to, we have to go down to options, cancel go to. But yes, very nice. Next we can set up routes, which of course are just several waypoints put into one route that you can follow. So it basically does a go to from waypoint to waypoint as you approach each one. This is a pretty cool feature. It'll give you the sunrise and sunset times, and of course the current date. It's August 3rd today, and you can calculate the distance from one waypoint to another, and it'll give you the bearing and the distance, which is pretty cool. The message page, which of course we've already seen a few times. Memory battery is low. What's new? And we have our settings. So for our settings, pretty simple. We have 5 pages. System. You can choose, for the mode, you can choose normal, the battery saver mode, or the simulator mode. which turns the actual GPS radio off and it puts it into a simulator mode so it pretends to navigate even though it's not. And speaking of battery life, these had very good battery life. They were advertised as being up to 36 hours in the battery saving mode, and that was actually better than the GPS 12 XL as well. We have our date and time, our offset, -3 for the Maritimes, even though it should be -4. You can set 12 or 24-hour clock. You can set how long the backlight stays on, up to 2 minutes. When you set it to 0, that means it stays on all the time. And you can set it to beep when you press a key and when there's a message, or only when there's a message, or not to beep at all, which is very nice. I usually set it not to beep at all. Our navigation page lets you set navigation settings, your position format, map datum, your CDI for the highway page, your units, and your heading. So there's that. Alarms, you can set for it to alert you when you're nearing your destination in a go-to, and if your CDI is off too far, which is useful for when you're boating. Interface, basically what protocol to use if you're connecting it to the computer or to something like a DGPS receiver. And after that we have our language. There is 9 different languages to choose from. So that's pretty much really all the features of this thing. Hopefully I described everything correctly. But what I'll do now is I will demonstrate connecting this to a computer to transfer data. What I've done is, of course, I have waypoints for all sorts of places, people's houses and stores and stuff on this GPS. What I did was I transferred all that to the computer, changed all the names and descriptions so that they fit the character limit for this thing, and I've made a whole separate waypoint database for this thing that I can load on it, and I have all my waypoints. Alright, I'm here on the Desk Pro where I have Garmin MapSource running. This is an older version of MapSource, the version that came with my eTrex Venture HC. This version's from 2008. Garmin actually doesn't even support MapSource anymore. They've moved on to another program called Basecamp, which I've never used it, but I'd be surprised if it's compatible with the GPS 12 series. But this version, even from 2008, is perfectly compatible. So I'll open the waypoint database I've made for the GPS 12CX. And here's all my waypoints. And as you can see, the names, they're all capitalized because it doesn't support lowercase letters. And they're all 6 letters or under long. And all of the descriptions, 16 letters long or less. So there's all that, and I even have a track here. Here's a track I saved from when I took a walk down the dirt road where I do the CB radio test. Yes, actually the way MapSource handles the waypoints for the 12CX is very nice, in that first of all, if you load waypoints that have been made on a newer GPS that uses different icons that the 12CX doesn't support, it'll just automatically change it to a different icon. Another nice thing is, something I didn't expect, is that if you have set waypoints that use a different color than the default blue, if you make waypoints with green or red icons and upload them to MapSource, it'll actually keep that data intact, so if you have to send it back to the GPS, it'll have the right color, so that's really nice. So what I'll do right now is I'll load those waypoints onto this GPS, of course because I've turned it off. It lost all its data, which included the waypoints, but I can load them back on it here, and we just plug the cable in and there, and that's all we have to do on the GPS's side. So what we do is we click the icon to send data to the GPS, and just for the heck of it, I'll send that track too. So we'll check waypoints and tracks. Device GPS 12CX software 2.01 on serial port 2. Send. Uploading at a walk being 9600 baud. And the GPS lets us know that that was a successful transfer. If we press page here, transfer has been completed. Now we're sending the track. There. And we can haul the cord out now. And if we look at the GPS, go to the waypoint list, you can see all of the waypoints, and if we go to the map page, you can see all the waypoints there, and if I zoom in, Oh, there's my man overboard waypoint, MOB. It saves it as a waypoint. There's the waypoint home. Actually, I'll try turning the backlight on. Oh, that's a bit better. If we go to our waypoint home and press enter, there's all our waypoint information. Home, our position, Trent's house, and all that. So that's cool. And actually, you can see all this green line here. That's the track I made from when I took a walk. If I zoom out here and pan over, you can see the track from when I took a walk. And that's the whole track. And there's our waypoint we made earlier. So because we made that waypoint called 001, and that's not in our database on MapSource here, I'll actually upload it from the GPS. So I click the upload button. There it is. I won't upload the track, I will upload that waypoint. So we click receive. It says transfer has been completed, even though it hasn't been. And ta-da! There's our waypoint 001, and it even got the little fish there. Oh, it got the man overboard waypoint too. Well, I think all there is to do now is to take this thing outside and to navigate with it. Alright, we are outside on the dirt trail where I did the CB radio tests. I'm here with the Garmin GPS 12CX, and we're getting an excellent signal from 9 satellites. Our EPE is 5 meters. So I'll just demonstrate some navigation here. So I'll go over to the position page, and when I start walking, it takes a few seconds to pick up, but there it's showing our speed, doing about 3 kilometers an hour. I don't know if you can make out the compass tape or not, but if I turn around here, there you saw the compass tape spin around. I was doing southeast, and now I'm doing about east. Now if I go onto the map page, you can see the track from a few days ago when I walked quite a ways up this road. But if I turn into this clearing here and start walking, and if we look at the map page, you can now see the little branch I made walking into this clearing. So I'm going to set something else up, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I've made a waypoint about 3/4 of a kilometer up ahead called Finish, and now I'm going to make a waypoint where I currently am called Start. Anytime you want to mark a waypoint at your current location, or if you're panning the map using the rocker pad and you want to mark a waypoint at that location, just press mark. So it automatically names the waypoint 002, but we can change that. And I have to scroll all through the letters until I make the word start. Okay, I've made the waypoint called start. I just gotta save it now. And back on the map page it'll show up. Yep, there's start and there's finish. So I want to go to finish, so I'm gonna demonstrate go to now. So we press go to, and we can go through all our waypoints, go to D, E, F here and find finish. There it is there. Press enter, and you can see, you might be able to see it created a red line between start and finish. Now how this GPS does a go to is really interesting because it's different than how Garmin's newer GPSs do a go-to. For the newer GPSs, a go-to is always from your current location to the destination. With this GPS, the go-to is always from where you made the go-to to your destination. And the reason it does that is so the highway page works correctly. So I'll start walking here towards finish. We're on the compass page and you can see the arrow pointing straight ahead towards where finish is. If we go back to the map page and we zoom in, you can see start behind me still has the red line beginning at it instead of at me like on a newer GPS. So I'll go to the highway page, and how the highway page works is really cool because it basically simulates an actual straight highway between where you made the go-to, which for me was back there, and where the go-to finishes. So let's say I step off to the side here, but I'm still heading in the direction of the go-to. Now I can't really go off to the side far enough to demonstrate it, but if I was off to the way over to the side, but still heading in the same direction that the path from the start to the finish is going, then it would show the highways being straight, but the little diamond indicator that represents me would be off to the side of the highway. So that's really interesting. Likewise, if I am on the highway, so I'm on the correct path, and I start heading in a wrong direction, let's say I start walking this ways, you can see the highway shows me as being in the middle of the highway, but the highway is pointed that way, because that's the way I need to turn in order to correctly be on the track towards finish. Now, the highway page really is only useful if you're on a boat, because the purpose of the highway page is basically to show you the most efficient way to get from start to finish, no matter which way you go. So it assumes that you have no obstacles in your way and you can walk geographically anywhere. So if you're walking or you're in a car, it's not really useful because you can't walk or drive anywhere you want. You're dictated by the roads and the paths. But if you're in a boat, in open water, you know, you can go just about anywhere you want in open water. Then the highway page is great because it shows you the most efficient way to get from start to finish, which of course is in a straight line. If I was off to the side but walking in a straight line, this thing would let me know that although I am walking in a straight line towards finish, it's not the most efficient straight line. So it'll let me know to get back on track. So, back to the map page. If I zoom out a bit here, you can see I'm heading toward finish. I think I made finish a little too far away. So, I'm going to head towards finish, then I'll be back. Our estimated time to get to finish is about 6.5 minutes, with about half a kilometer to go. Alright, so I'm a couple of minutes away from reaching finish. So I'll keep the camera rolling to demonstrate the alarm it sounds when you're getting close to your destination. If I go to the highway page, yes, you might be able to see, by which I mean I'm attempting to, but you probably can't. The highway actually has a finish line drawn across it. And there's our alarm. If we press page, approaching finish. So I'll cut it off here because I've walked enough. Now what I'll do is I'll demonstrate the track back feature, which is always on Garmin's earliest GPSs, they always had the track back. If we look at the map page, I'll just walk this ways a little bit so it turns around, and we zoom in a bit. You can see my track there. So track back, basically, if you don't know, is the GPS gets you to follow the track you made, you know, right to the track. And that way, you know, if say if you were walking and you dropped something along your way, track back would take you exactly where you walked, roughly anyway, and it's a pretty nice feature. So to track back, you press go to the options, and track back. So we press enter, and basically how track back works is it takes your track and it picks random points along that track, makes them as waypoints, and then does a route. So it makes a route of waypoints. In this case, because the track I made is pretty short, there's only 2 waypoints that make it up. But when you get to one point of the track back, it automatically switches the go-to the other point. So it's pretty nice. So we'll go to the compass page here, and we'll start walking. Alright, so we're approaching the first point of our track back, and when we get close, it'll automatically switch to the next point. That's how routes work anyway. If you create a route, you can create your own routes. It just automatically goes from one point to the next as you approach them. Okay, I guess my track back only made 2 points, one at the beginning of the track and one at the end of the track, so it had no other points to switch to. But I have tried it, and that's how it works. It creates points along the track, and then as you approach each point, it does a go-to the next automatically. So anyway, that's track back, and really that's all the navigation I have to show you on this thing. So I'm gonna walk back home, and then we'll wrap things up. Well, that is finally pretty much all there is to show of the Garmin GPS 12CX handheld GPS receiver from around 1999. Wow, this is probably going to be the longest video I've ever uploaded. I will be amazed if I can get it under an hour after editing. I think I have about an hour and a half of unedited video. But before I go, just a couple of more interesting things about this. First of all of Garmin's older GPSs, I would say probably ones introduced up to 1999, including this GPS, are powered by an Intel 8386 microprocessor. That's pretty cool. It's a 386EX, which is the small embedded version of the processor, and I believe it runs at 16 megahertz, so yeah, that's pretty cool. And finally, I just want to show the diagnostic page. Of course, all of Garmin's GPSs have a diagnostic page that you can go to. It's not documented in the manual, but on this particular GPS, you just hold down Enter and turn it on. Ta-da! And here's the diagnostic page. You can test all the buttons. And we have some technical stuff which I'm not too sure about. The frequency there is 16 million and some, so I assume that's the processor's clock speed of 16 megahertz. Has a built-in thermometer, which it doesn't use for general use purposes, but it uses the temperature. Basically, the temperature might vary the frequency, and so it has to adjust for that so it gets a good signal. We have our software version 2.01. Garmin only ever released one software update for this. Oh, my battery's just died. But like any Garmin GPS, when this first came out, it had software version 2.0. Any Garmin GPS starts at 2.0. And then they released one update a couple of months after, version 2.01, which just added another map datum. Which is too bad, because the GPS 12 and the GPS 12 XL, they kept getting updates right into 2001. Garmin introduced the one and only update for this in 1999. So this doesn't have some of the features that the 12 XL and the 12 have that were brought via software updates. Like, off the top of my head, I know the GPS 12 XL has an area calculation feature. You walk around in a circle or whatever, and it'll calculate the area of it. This doesn't have that, which is too bad. But at the same time, I can understand why. You know, for the GPS 12 and 12 XL, it was easy to make updates for them because they, you know, were the same except for a couple other features. This thing, pretty much, you can consider it as being a totally different operating system, because Garmin had to take the GPS 12 XL and completely rewrite the user interface to take advantage of the color display, which, by the way, in my opinion, they did a really good job of doing. I'm glad that they seem to put a lot of effort into actually rewriting the user interface from the 12 XL to use a color display. But I can understand that they didn't put out many software updates. Also because they discontinued this very shortly and it wasn't very popular, so it just made sense to update the 12 XL and the 12, which were much more popular. Anyway, that's about it, so I'll try and get back into the diagnostic page here. Our battery voltage, 4.3 volts currently. It doesn't seem to go any lower than 3.6 volts, but at that point it shuts off anyway. We passed our base map test, because this has no base map anyway. The time it's been turned on, and if we had it connected to external power, it would give the voltage for that. If we press page, enter I mean, there it has different pages to test the display, which these pages were carried over to my old eTrex Legend. There you have the color test. There's the animation there. There's that, and that's it. And my batteries just died. It took about half a dozen takes to go through all the diagnostic screens because my batteries are completely dead. How about that? Through the course of this video, I started out with carbon zinc batteries that had the battery meter up to full, and now at the end of this video, they're just about completely dead. So there you go. So when it comes to really this GPS, it doesn't do anything that my eTrex can't do. I bought it pretty much purely for the novelty of it, because it's a vintage GPS, and it's a vintage GPS that's rare and that has a very interesting display. But all in all, I think it's a very nice GPS. I think the color display is pretty nice, and I'm glad I got it. I don't know if I'll ever get to fixing the memory battery. Maybe someday I will. But for what it is, I think it's very cool. So there is the Garmin GPS 12CX. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and I'll see you guys next time.